Do we do it?
I said 9. Was it 9?
And we don't have.
I feel like we gave a lot of space for others to speak and like have their time. And, oftentimes that was like very long period of time, but that was really nice that we were trying to give that.
Also noticed though that when we had our cameras on, that everybody was taking note of where other people looked like they were at. So if we saw that maybe somebody had a little bit of excitement, that other people would step back a bit. And that's what we were trying to do, I think, when we turned our cameras off, is try and kind of let other people have space, kind of like how Chin said. And so that's why I think at the end we started just playing a fast game, because there was no way to gauge each other than to just jump right in. And so that's kind of what I noticed about the group.
My next question is, what do we think shifted when we turned our cameras off? I think Juliet and Heather have acknowledged this a little bit, but I want to give the opportunity for people to directly address that.
Well, I mean, I guess like what they said, it's a lot harder to gauge like actions from other people, because some of us were being observant and like kind of trying to see where everyone else was at. So when the cameras were off, it was just hard to do that. We really didn't know what to do for a second. But yeah.
I think that with the cameras off, I noticed whenever we messed up, there would be like a lot more laughter, and like it was like we were embracing the challenge and understanding that it was difficult, but like ready to like try to get it. So that was nice.
Yeah, like to go off that, I feel like we started like repeating it over quicker. Like there was less space for someone to start it off again.
I'm curious, when we were doing it with our screens off, were we still all watching our screen? I wonder if we closed our eyes and stopped watching for information, if that would have made a difference for us. I'm just curious, like, because I think we're still using the watching sense. And if we closed our eyes, then we're really like using a different sense. So I'm curious if that would shift the rhythm. And there were patterns that popped up. Like at times it seemed like folks were trying to go after the same person when it was with our eyes closed. I was kind of noticing that. Or they looked like patterns on my screen. Of course, it doesn't look the same as your screen, so it would look like a different pattern.
I just want to know, like, did anybody else feel like super isolated when their cameras were off? Because like I personally felt so isolated, and I was like, I don't know what anyone else is doing, and just like not being able to see anybody's face for me just felt really isolating. And so that's why when the game was going faster for me, I felt much more like community, just because I felt like more voices were popping up. And so I don't know, it was kind of isolating for me when we had our cameras off.
For the most part, I was kind of confused sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's all. Vanessa?
I kind of like how it's been mentioned, at times it was.
I did not realize that I had felt isolated until Juliet named that. And then I was kind of shocked by how much my body had changed, and that there was definitely a lot more laughter, and that Trin is acknowledging that as like we're like facing the challenge. But for me, it kind of felt like, if we were laughing, we were connecting and still feeling together, even though we couldn't see one another. And just how bizarre I had like internalized that, but didn't like rationalize or externalize it until you'd said that. So thank you, Juliet. And I pass it to Trent.
Yeah, I actually also want to comment on that feeling of isolation. Like, I always feel that in discussions when we have breakout rooms and then everyone's cameras are off. And then now I'm just thinking about this and like a professor's perspective on like facing a sea of blank screens and how that must feel to like lecture to that. Um, yeah, I enjoy that different perspective. I think that that's important. And I will pass it to Moira.
Well, I think not talking about like having cameras off or anything, but like at the beginning of the games, I definitely was like more timid. I think like as we got more into it, then it was like, you know, we were all laughing together and like and being like, oh, it's okay to mess up. It's kind of fun to mess up sometimes, you know. And I was like more outgoing, I guess. I'll pass it to Juliet now.
Kind of debriefing the game. I think I feel like we're like okay with like being vulnerable and like messing up in this space because we kind of collectively messed up together, and so I think I feel a bit more comfortable with that and a bit more accepting of myself after that. So yeah, Alondra.
I just wanted to say I really like playing these games because every time I do, like it just always kind of relieves like tension. Like you find yourself kind of like relaxing a little bit and everyone's laughing. So it's just really nice. But yeah, kind of like what you mentioned, like when everyone turned their camera off, I was just so like, I don't know, it just felt off. Like it felt odd. And I also thought about that trend, like if this is what I feel, I wonder how my professors and like GSIs are feeling when all of us have our cameras off. But yeah, it was just, I love these little games. They're always so fun. But Kai.
Okay. I had a lot of fun. I think I was really nervous in the beginning to like mess up, but once I heard people were like laughing and it was like okay to mess up, I started talking more. And I think I'd also like to comment on the professors like not seeing people's faces. Like I kind of already imagined that or ahead of time, but to like have it happen to me and not see people's faces was very insightful.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like I was just reflecting on if someone's in a class coming up with some group agreements for online learning, and what does it mean to say as a young person leading a class or a circle of their peers, as a GSI, as a professor, whichever, right? Like I'm thinking like, what would it be like to do this and then do the, but you kind of needed the example, right? You needed we could see and then not see. And then as you're doing like a debrief cycle, I was just thinking, wow. And then you come up with group agreements, right? So like, as opposed to someone telling folks, I feel really isolated as a teacher here. I feel really alone. I don't know. I can't read your faces. First of all, you never laugh because you're on mute. And I, you know, like whatever. I mean, I'm just making that up, but I slightly feel that way sometimes. I've had to really flex that muscle with online working with young people and really like, okay, let it go, read other signs, use the chat more, you know, adapt. But sometimes I'm like, I just want to see their faces. And I'm just thinking about that, like what were the little gems that in people's reflections that like help us take things to describe, I mean, to interpret and apply in debrief cycles. Yeah. Because I also think there's this whole thing that both Kai and Moira offered around messing up. And is it fun to mess up? So those were just little gems. Each of you said little things. And Tom, I think you also saying about being confused was really beautiful too. Like, how often are we confused in spaces and we try to fake it to be there? Or like, what does that mean? And how do we take care of ourselves? I think Alondra, like there was things each of you said that are like such little gems, you know, I was just reflecting on that.